Why do state-level laws preempt local laws? And why is it this guy's fault? Okay, so it's the 1860s. The people in the Iowa state legislature just passed a law that says, hey, this railroad company can build a railroad through Clinton, Iowa. But Clinton has this law that says nobody can say what gets built on our streets except us. Who gets to decide? Who gets to choose whether or not this railroad gets built? Is it Iowa's state legislature, or is it the city government of Clinton? So this question of whether or not the railroad can get built in Clinton ends up in court. And the case goes all the way up to the Iowa State Supreme Court, where one Judge John F. Dillon writes the opinion deciding whether or not the local government gets to decide or the state government gets to decide whether this railroad gets built. So, spoiler alert, Clinton loses. Judge Dillon says it's the state government that gets to decide, not the local government. In America, local governments usually don't make themselves. In the vast majority of states, they are created, and they're created by the state government. The state legislature will write a law, and that law will say something like, we want to create the town of Nowheresville. This law, creating the town, will eventually become the town's charter. In his opinion, Judge Dillon considers this fact that state governments create local governments and says, quote, as it creates, so it may destroy. If it may destroy, then it may abridge and control. Unless there is some constitutional limitation on the right, the legislature might, by a single act, if we can suppose it capable of so great a folly and so great a wrong, sweep from existence all of the municipal corporations in the state. He calls local governments the mere tenants at will of the legislature. This means, on the issue of whether or not the railroad can get built in Clinton, the state government wins. The state passed a law saying the railroad's going to get built. And that law preempts the local government law because that local government only exists at the whim of the Iowa state government. The Iowa state can limit Clinton's authority however the state pleases, including by overriding Clinton's ability to govern its own streets. A few years later, Judge Dillon ends up writing this legal treatise, and in the treatise, he explains the meaning or the consequences of this holding in the Clinton Railroad case. He says that local governments only have the powers that are expressly given to them by the state when the state legislature passes the law that ends up becoming a local government's charter, and those powers that are fairly implied by the express grants. This understanding of local governments as only having those powers that are expressly given to them by state governments became known as Dillon's rule. Other states aside from Iowa ended up looking at Dillon's rule and saying, hey, we like this. We think this is a good way to divide authority between local governments and state governments. Today, Dillon's rule governs the relationship between local and state governments in the majority of American states.